200,000 men were trapped. On January the 8th, the Soviets called on the Germans to surrender. They refused. On January the 31st, 1943, Paulus was forced to surrender. Over 100,000 men stumbled off into captivity. Only 5,000 would ever return to Germany. Stalingrad had been a bloody battle. The Germans had been savaged. They had lost some 300,000 of their men and at least as many of their allies. The Russians had lost about the same number, including thousands of civilians. It was Germany's greatest catastrophe in the war so far, but it wouldn't be the last. The Red Army was now inflicting massive defeats on Hitler's forces across the whole Eastern Front. Stalingrad had been a great triumph for the Soviet army. Now its operational commander, Marshal Zhukov, set his sights on Germany's Army Group A, still camped in the Caucasus. Soviet troops thrust their way west of Stalingrad, and by early December 1942 were within 120 miles of Rostov. There was a real possibility all the German forces in the south would be cut off. With little choice, Hitler reluctantly gave Army Group A permission to fall back. Over the next month, the Germans fought a skillful rearguard action. Then, on January the 12th, 1943, Zhukov launched an all-out assault. The Soviets attacked along a 500-mile front. Outnumbered 7-1, von Manstein, the overall commander of German forces in the region, fought a brilliant mobile retreat. But by the end of February, the Red Army had recaptured both Kursk and the nearby city of Kharkov. This Russian winter offensive had struck a crippling blow to German power. Over a matter of months, it had lost 1 million men and vast numbers of tanks and guns. The Red Army still had enormous reserves of manpower. It was also benefiting from a huge increase in weapons production and aid from the United States and Britain. The Germans also no longer had the technological upper hand. The T-34 tank was more than a match for the Panzer Mark IV. And they also had the terrifying Katyusha multiple rocket system, which shattered German troops. Yet Hitler refused to give up hope. He still dreamed of a preemptive summer assault that would throw the Soviet Union off balance and regain the initiative. The city of Kursk seemed the obvious place to start. Here, the Soviet assault had pushed a bulge deep into the German lines. It looked temptingly exposed. Hitler decided it should be cut off and annihilated. He also had an ace up his sleeve. The German counterattack would be led by a new generation of German tanks, specially designed to combat the formidable Russian T-34. The massive but slow 55-ton Tiger had a lethal 88mm gun, and its frontal armor made it almost impervious to Soviet tank guns. And then there was the faster 43-ton Panther with a new 75mm gun, also capable of knocking out a T-34. These tanks were so new, Hitler was forced to delay the attack whilst sufficient numbers were manufactured and delivered to the front. But even as the German forces began to assemble, the Soviet commander, Marshal Zhukov, guessed what was about to happen. Soon afterwards, he received information from a Soviet spy ring inside the German High Command, confirming the site of the attack. Zhukov ordered the construction of a series of defensive lines with anti-tank ditches, minefields, and deep belts of barbed wire. He also massively built up Soviet forces in the area, pulling in troops and tanks from less vulnerable parts of the front. By the eve of the assault on Kursk, the Germans were hugely outnumbered by Soviet defenders, who also knew exactly when the Germans would attack. On July the 5th, 1943, just as the German troops prepared to assault, they were hit by a huge Soviet artillery bombardment. Even so, the next morning, the panzers still rolled forward. But this time, they were up against a well-entrenched enemy. There was no realistic chance of a lightning blitzkrieg breakthrough.